Hello, again, my name is Alexa Waters. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator here at Special Needs Cobb, or SNC, here in Marietta. We're Cobb County's original special needs nonprofit. We have been around for about 65 years. Originally, we're known as ARC. In 2007, we changed our name to Right in the Community. And in 2020, we renamed ourselves to Special Needs Cobb. We've always tried to strive to meet the current needs of the special needs community in our area. And about 20 years ago, it came about that a lot of families were looking for group homes that were nearby for their special needs loved ones. And with that, over the course of several years, we built 23 group homes for special needs folks in the area. And today we still own and maintain these homes. We're in the midst of a really awesome renovation project. All of our homes are getting just about total makeovers. They look really incredible. In addition to group homes, we also provide facility-based respite services and supportive resources for special needs families, just like this workshop. Tonight we have an awesome presenter. Her name is Maki. Many of you probably already know who she is. Anna is the Director of Benefits Navigation at the Dodd Institute. She earned her Juris Doctorate at the University of Georgia School of Law and has a master's in community counseling. Through BDI, she addresses issues impacting individuals with developmental disabilities. She's developed a comprehensive benefits mapping process to assess individuals' eligibility for benefits, including Social Security, Medicaid waivers, family support services, GVRA, and more. Since she started the program in 2016, her and her team have served over 1,500 families and has secured over $250 million in lifetime benefits for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That is absolutely incredible. She's also a community partner work incentive counselor with the Social Security Administration. She has over 20 years of professional experience, and she is also the mom of an adult son with autism. There's literally nobody better in this area to be giving this presentation on SSI. She's going to give you all the information that you need to know. And once you leave, I think you're going to be better equipped at understanding this whole process of benefits with SSI. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Anna, and I'll see you guys in the Q&A.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. I'm always humbled with your introduction, so I appreciate your kind words very much. Everything that I have learned the hard way. You know, isn't that University of Hard Knocks always the case? You know, I didn't set out. It was never my goal. You know, when you're a little kid, I wanted to be a zookeeper. You know, what are you going to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a zookeeper. I wanted to herd cats. And working closely with Social Security, I feel like I'm a zookeeper because it's sort of a wild beast and it's hard to predict. And yeah, so anything that I can do to provide some support to you to help you gain insight into the processes is just good time well spent. I won't pretend to know all the answers. I can just share as much information as I've gleaned over the years. It seems like the rules are always changing, the processes are always changing. We went through the pandemic. Wow, that was a big change with the way Social Security was handling things. And we're still in a recovery phase with that because there are just so many cases that are backlogged because Social Security, as you're aware, closed their offices. So it took some time for them to figure out their internal protocols for how they were going to do case management. And it just really slowed down the process. So what used to take about 4 months now is taking about 8 or 10 months. So it's quite a time-consuming process these days. But, you know, I say all that just to let you know that sometimes the best answer I can give you is a maybe or it depends, because that's just how it is. Sometimes Social Security is fairly capricious. and hard to predict. And there is some level of discretion. There's some level of discretion that intake coordinators have with quick determination cases and whatnot that, again, just really difficult to predict. So with that being said, I want to make sure that you have at least the base knowledge, so when we go through this today, what I want to really uncover for you are all of these base pieces. So I first want to make sure that we distinguish between supplemental security income and Social Security disability insurance. My son is 29 this year, and it seems like just yesterday that I was going through this process with him, filing for SSI when he was 18. I've never filed for SSI before. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't understand the difference, and had to kind of, again, learn the hard way. I was like, oh, this is how it works. And so it was nice to see firsthand. And now watching the processes evolve, it's just, again, been a very interesting journey. So starting off with understanding what your benefit is essential. And understanding how those benefits are the same or different. We're going to talk about how health insurance is related to that, specifically Medicaid. And then I want to do a deep dive into the application process. And as we do that, we're not going to focus as much on, are we applying by phone or in person or online? There are different ways that you can apply. But what we really want to focus on is making sure that you have all your ducks in a row so that that application is a thorough application. So we want to make sure that you're positioning your case for determination of disability via those Blue Book standards. So we're going to look at that. And then I want to, kind of jump ahead and go, yay, once you get awarded, what do you need to do? How do you increase your SSI award to get the maximum amount? What do you do if your loved one has been awarded Social Security but wants to work? How do you calculate that? So I want to talk a little bit about that as well. And you noticed up here, we're talking about the medical determination of disability, the Blue Book. Social Security has two primary resources for folks, the Blue Book and the Red Book. So the Blue Book is all things tied to securing benefits. The Red Book are all those rules and regulations once the Social Security beneficiary is interested in working and begins work. So all you have to do is Google Social Security Blue Book and you'll see a lot of criteria, or Social Security Red Book. You can actually download the Red Book in PDF form so you can see what those rules look like as it relates to both SSI and SSDI. So this is quite a bit of ground that we're going to cover tonight. We're going to just jump right in and start with SSI. So supplemental security income, this is a needs-based monthly cash benefit. And when I say needs-based, that means that it's means tested. So not everybody may be eligible for SSI depending on if they are not financially eligible. So what that means is that there are two hurdles to jump through with SSI. So the first hurdle is a financial hurdle. This is the means testing hurdle. So we want to make sure that you're financially eligible for SSI. And then once you're determined financially eligible, you move on to that medical determination of disability. So it's a two-pronged test with SSI. Generally, individuals who are minors, if they are applying for SSI, their parents' work record, and income is always going to be a factor. One thing I get concerned about when I see children with SSI is I just want to make sure that the parents know to make sure that they're reporting their earnings very carefully, because this is the biggest payback situation or overcharge situation that I see, is when we have individuals who were minors when they had SSI and their parents didn't always report the work. And so then it's time for them to have SSI in their own right, and they have thousands of dollars that they need to be paying back because of some of those rules. So yikes. So yeah, so let's just always be super, super careful. When you have SSI, it's a needs-based program, so you always want to make sure that your records match Social Security's records. At age 18, this is when most individuals are applying, because at that point, the parent's income isn't an issue. So if you have, if the family is at that federal poverty line, SSI for the child should definitely be a consideration. If you're your typical middle class family, chances are your family income is going to be too high for SSI as a minor. But no matter what the family's income is, when that individual turns 18, they're a disabled adult child and they can apply on their record. So the parent's income does not come into play when that individual turns 18. So when I talk about being means tested, there's two financial limits. There's income limits and resource limits. So the income limits involves what Social Security is going to be counting as income and how much income do you have coming in. And really it's as simple as, if you are bringing in as much as the award, you're likely going to be financially ineligible. And this is very important when it comes to situations in which child support is involved, because child support is viewed for the individual, not so any individual that is filing for SSI, if they're receiving child support for their benefit, that's going to be viewed as countable income. It may not be countable earned income, but it's certainly countable income. So if that amount is going to be over that SSI award, then that individual is not going to be technically eligible for SSI, because they're not going to have met that income means test. So the way you get around that is you would have to get your child support order modified so that child support goes into a first party supplemental needs trust. And if that child support goes into a supplemental needs trust, it's no longer viewed as countable income. So the second part of that is resource limits. So resource limits, because SSI is tied to Medicaid, those Medicaid resource limits are going to be applicable. So that means that you can't have any more than $2,000 in resources. And this is 2,000 total resources. So the individual has a checking account and a savings account and some cash stashed in their mattress. All of that needs to add up and needs to be less than $2,000. So when you first apply for SSI, you're going to go through a technical screen for this means testing. They're going to ask about income. They're going to ask about what resources that you have. And only when you can prove that you are eligible from this means testing perspective will you go to the next step of determining that medical determination of disability, going on to disability determination services. So that means tested part, very, very critical. The maximum award for 2022 is 841. That's going to go up in January. It goes up every year. So again, when you're looking at that countable income, if that countable income is exceeding 841, you might have a tougher challenge with that financial eligibility piece. So let's talk about how SSI is tied to Medicaid. A lot of questions are asked about how do you apply for Medicaid, and a lot of folks think it's a separate application. It's not a separate application. If you file for SSI and you're awarded SSI, yay, you're also awarded Medicaid. In fact, sometimes the Medicaid is a little faster to work, and folks will get their Medicaid card or their Medicaid approval letter before their letter of award from Social Security. So that's always a good sign if you get that letter of eligibility for Medicaid while you're waiting for that SSI determination. That's a really good sign. So yeah, Medicaid is awarded concurrently with SSI. Keep in mind, Medicaid is always going to be the payer of last resort. And this is going to be a benefit that if your individual is on a trajectory for a home and community-based waiver, like a now comp waiver, you're going to always need to maintain Medicaid for the duration, because a home and community-based waiver is paid by, in part, by Medicaid. So yeah, you're always going to need to maintain that Medicaid. So it comes with SSI, but then, and we'll talk later about when you transition from SSI to SSDI, how do you maintain that Medicaid eligibility? So just a reminder again, because Medicaid has that $2,000 financial limit, that's where that originates from with the means testing for SSI. That's that cap for financial resources. So again, exceeding financial resources is probably the most common reason that we see denials. It's also one of the most common reasons that we see overpayments for individuals. And when I talk about an overpayment, what I'm basically meaning there is that is an individual who has failed to report or failed to manage their account. So let's say in the month of September, their savings account is over $2,000, even if it's only over by $1, $2,001, $2,005. And that happens September, October, November, December, January, all this time, even though it's just a little bit over, Social Security has the right to come back and audit your accounts to say, oh, all those months that you were over $2,000, you have to pay us back for the SSI that you received those months. So yikes, it's very, very important to make sure once you're awarded SSI that you're managing it appropriately. And that means making sure that you're reporting any earnings and that you're managing to those financial limits. I strongly recommend individuals to use an ABLE account for any incremental savings. That's going to help you keep below that 2,000 mark. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. This is legislation that came out around 2015 and was for the express purpose of creating another vehicle for families to save, understanding that we have this $2,000 limit. So by having an ABLE account, that's viewed as a safe harbor. So both ABLE accounts and supplemental needs trust, and a supplemental needs trust is used interchangeably with a special needs trust. A lot of people are more comfortable with that special needs trust language. It's the same thing. Those terms are just interchangeable. But if you have a supplemental needs trust and an ABLE account, those the commonality they share is that these are both for the purpose of safeguarding those Medicaid benefits so that the individual is able to save more than $2,000. So at this juncture, you can put up to $16,000 in an ABLE account. Now, when you get that SSI award, keep in mind the purpose of SSI is supplemental security income. It's a needs-based program, so it's intended to pay for basic needs. Like you should be paying for shelter, food, clothing, all the basics that an individual needs. It's not intended for charitable gift giving. It's not intended to go into your ABLE account. So what I recommend folks do is that if they have some extra, that money starting to go over, particularly because of their earning, put that in the ABLE account. Any gifts that they may be receiving from family members, you have a graduation celebration and people start sending you money, put it in an ABLE account. It's just a good way to safeguard that money. Long-term planning, you'd want to look at a supplemental needs trust because, again, we're going to have to always maintain that Medicaid eligibility if you're on that trajectory for a home and community-based waiver. So, I look at my son's situation. He has a supplemental needs trust. It has this much in it right now, but it's going to be fully funded when my will matures. Have you ever noticed nobody ever dies in estate planning? Your will matures or your life insurance policy matures. So when my will matures, that money, instead of going directly to him, will flow into the supplemental needs trust. And that's important because he is a recipient of a comp waiver. So right now he has SSI and a comp waiver. So he's always going to need to keep that money below $2,000. So that policy would throw him off Medicaid, and therefore he would lose all of his services. So by having it go directly into a supplemental needs trust instead, we're covered. Likewise, by having an ABLE account, we can use that ABLE account as a pass-through account so that you can get a disbursement from the supplemental needs trust to the ABLE account and have more flexibility with how he uses that money. So that's part of our personal planning, but I just wanted to share that with you because I like the flexibility of being able to kind of toggle between a supplemental needs trust and an ABLE account down the road. But for right now, using that ABLE account for savings is certainly a great way to maintain that Medicaid eligibility. To set up ABLE account, you can't go into like a Bank of America or Wells Fargo. You have to go through one of these agencies. So in Georgia, it's Georgia Stable. So you would go to georgiastable.com and complete that process to create an ABLE account. So let's talk about SSDI, a radically different program. So Social Security Disability Insurance, this is actually a program that's funded through Social Security. I mean, people talk about, oh, the Social Security Trust Fund, that's where SSDI is being paid from. Whereas SSI is actually part of just the general federal budget. So some distinctions of where that money is actually coming from. When you have an adult dependent child, and we see this really frequently, the classic flow is you have an individual, they turn 18, they get SSI, they may work some, but primarily they are an adult dependent child. And when that parent either dies or retires or becomes disabled, and when that parent is drawing Social Security, that's the trigger. That's what opens the door for that adult dependent child to then be part of that parent's work record. So to be eligible for SSDI, there's really 4 ways. 3 are based on the parent, and 1 is based on that individual's own work credits. So again, let's use my son as an example. So right now, happily, I'm still with us. Yay, I haven't died yet. So he's not a survivor. Secondly, I'm still working, so I'm not retired, so I'm not drawing retirement. Happily, I'm not disabled, so he's not eligible for SSDI on my work record just yet. Down the road, he will be, and at that point in time, he will transition from SSI to SSDI at the point of my retirement. But let's say he starts working, and guess what? He's going to start a job next on September 7th. Yay, a real job where you know what makes a real job? A real job is when you pay real taxes. So because he will be paying FICA taxes, that means he's going to be earning work credits. And so over time, even though he may not be working more than a few hours a week, he may still be earning work credits. And so over time, those work credits may get to the point where he's eligible for SSDI on his own record. So you can be an adult dependent child and still be on a trajectory to have benefits off of a parent's work record, even if your child is working. So what that would look like is, let's say that he earns enough where he gets an SSDI payment. It's not going to be a big payment, okay? It's probably not going to come close to what he's getting in SSI. So because SSDI, though, is an entitlement program, because he's earned those work credits, he's entitled to be able to use that for SSDI, then what that would mean is that he would be a concurrent beneficiary. So he would have some income from SSDI from all of his work credits, but then they'd make up the difference to get up to whatever that annual amount of SSI is. So he would probably get a little bit more than that 841, not much more, but probably a little bit more. But he would be both an SSDI and SSI beneficiary. They call that being dually eligible or being a concurrent beneficiary. So what's really important when we're filing for Social Security, and this is why I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk to y'all and talk to parents who are just getting started with this process, because I really want to get people on that Social Security process as young adults when they're 18, and at least before age 22, because the older you get, the harder it may be to show that that disability occurred prior to age 22. And that prior to age 22 is important because that's what establishes you as an adult dependent child. And the advantage of being an adult dependent child is you're this childhood disability beneficiary, which means that you're eligible for 50% of that parent's work record. And I've had a number of kind of sad cases, frankly, where I had individuals who were 23, 24, and so their onset of disability, whether caused by a traumatic brain injury or mental health issue or fill in the blank, they were over that age of 22. And even though they're still very young adults at age 23, they're past that threshold, so they can't receive 50% of their parents' work record. Ouch. So again, if I can work with folks between 18 and 22 to get to that determination of disability, that's just a little bit easier than having to prove that date of onset later on. Let's look at SSDI and Medicare and Medicaid. So we talked about how SSI is tied to Medicaid and SSDI is tied to Medicare. Here's the thing though, is if you're a disability beneficiary and you're getting your SSDI income now because you're off of your parents' record, because your parents retired, there is a 24-month waiting period before you're eligible for Medicare. So we need to plan around that 24-month, and we're looking at some other options, doing some exploration around a Medicare Advantage supplemental needs plan, but there's still a lot to learn about that. So I'm not going to share too much information about that at this time. But right now, I do want to just call out that there's a 24-month waiting period for CDB beneficiaries. I did mention that Medicaid goes with SSI. But when you talk about Medicaid in Georgia, there's actually 34 classifications of Medicaid in Georgia. And what that basically looks like is, think of it like a building with a lot of different doors. So you can go in and access Medicaid from different doors. And there may be different types of Medicaid, right? So let's say as a minor and you want to access Medicaid, you may be going through that Katie Beckett deeming waiver door. And then when they turn 18 and they are eligible for SSI, then they have straight Medicaid through SSI. So you're going through that door. But you can, as you transition from SSI to SSDI as a childhood disability beneficiary, that puts you in a protected class. So that opens the door to Medicaid. Even though you started with SSI, you can continue your Medicaid as a CDB. Okay, so I think a lot of times people get very afraid. They see, this retirement on the horizon. They see this transition of SSI to SSDI, and they're not aware that they can continue Medicaid. That answer is yes, you can continue your Medicaid after you've transitioned to SSDI. You're changing the classification of Medicaid. So it's no longer SSI Medicaid, it is CDB Medicaid, but it's still straight Medicaid. Okay, so it's still an opportunity for you. But there's another form of Medicaid I wanted to mention. It's called QMB Medicaid. So if you are an SSDI beneficiary, and you're receiving Medicare, you would want to make sure, even if you had straight Medicaid, you would also want to make sure that you had QMB Medicaid as a qualified Medicare beneficiary, because then that's going to pay your Medicare premiums, deductibles, and co-insurance costs. So, yay, that's an extra benefit. Again, the most common situation, most individuals start with SSI at age 18, and then they transition to SSDI when the parent retires, but you're just using a different form of or different classification of Medicaid to ensure that transition takes place. Sometimes we see individuals originating with SSDI. So even if they never had SSI Medicaid and they start with SSDI, they may still be eligible for Medicaid. Just a quick word about the deeming waiver in Medicaid. A lot of times we have families who have individuals with significant or severe disabilities and require multiple therapies or have hospital bills and whatnot. They may be eligible for Medicaid even if their income as parents exceeds that SSI financial eligibility. This is called the deeming waiver, formerly known as a Katie Beckett waiver, that's simply providing access to Medicaid. So it's not services, it's not income, it's access to Medicaid. So what we see when that individual turns 18, the Katie Beckett deeming waiver at that point stops because the individual is reaching the age of adulthood. So what we ensure that we're doing is we take a copy of that SSI application and give it to the Katie Beckett unit office, so then that way they can continue access to Medicaid. So we don't want to see any lapse in services, and this is a particularly cogent issue to bring to the attention of the intake coordinator or to the attention of Social Security when you're filing that initial application. So if your loved one is currently receiving a Katie Beckett deeming waiver, you want to make sure, hello, they're already receiving Medicaid. We're requesting a quick determination because we need to continue all of these services, and we don't want to have any lapse in those services. So we want to make that statement to Social Security with the hopes that we're going to expedite that outcome a little bit. So how do you apply for SSA benefits? So there's a lot of different ways to apply. You can apply over the phone. You can apply in person. You can apply online. Prior to the pandemic, back in the day, I used to go with families to the Social Security office, and a lot of my families were served in that Norcross office off of Shackleford Road, and parking is awful there, but I was always get there really early, have my little spot, like, hey, this is my spot, guys. And at that point, when I was with someone, you were there with the window and the big plexiglass and you're sliding documents underneath the plexiglass. And quite frankly, I wasn't much more than a companion animal. I was just there, it's going to be okay, because we'd already done everything that we could possibly do. And we had all of our documents ready to go. There was value in going in person because there's just a little bit of satisfaction in sliding all those documents underneath the plexiglass. Is like, I see you, you're stamping it, I know for sure that you've got it, because it's sort of this leap of faith when you apply online. It's definitely a leap of faith when you put something in the mail. Is the right person really going to get it? How do you know? It's kind of tough. So going in person and having them get that and make a copy of it and punch stuff into the computer was very satisfying, actually. So yeah, there's multiple ways that you can do it. The offices are now open again, so you can set up that in-person meeting, or you can do it online. When I work with families and I'm like, okay, we're going to get started. How do we get started? What's the very first thing that we're going to do? The very first thing that we want to do is complete an adult disability report, because all of the questions on this adult disability report form the basis of that online application. And if you were going to go into the office in person, or if you were going to do a phone interview, their questions are pretty much going to come straight off this report. So being able to have that, just to me, it's the consummate cheat sheet for getting ready to file online. No matter how many times I've gone to Social Security or how many times I support families in doing, you kind of held your breath a little bit, like, is this going to work? It's feel like you're going to the principal's office or something. I don't know. So having the form already filled out, it's like a cheat sheet. It gives you more confidence in going through the technicalities of completing that online application. Gives you the opportunity to look and make sure that you're using all the appropriate language, that you're listing all of the conditions, that you have. You've taken the time to prepare some remarks. That the application, that disability report section 11 gives you an opportunity to make remarks. Like, anything else you want to add? Well, yes, let's talk about this. And so it just gives you an opportunity to write a little summary of, here's the situation and here's the severity of needs. And we do all these activities of daily living, and we're eligible for a home and community-based waiver. And we really would like a quick determination because, we already got the Medicaid through deeming waiver, and we want to continue it. So just gives you a lot of opportunity to add extra information that's not addressed per se in that report. So take advantage of section 11 of that adult disability report. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward. What's your information, the preparer's information, the list of the conditions, the work history, where'd you go to school, what medications, just a lot of information that Where it gets tricky is at section 8 with the medical information. This is where it gets a little time consuming because it wants to know the doctor and the doctor's office, but when was the first visit, when was the last visit, and when was the next scheduled visit? Did you have any hospitalizations? Well, what were the dates? What kind of tests were done? So sometimes it takes a little bit of time to gather all that information. So that's why using that adult disability report is a fantastic cheat sheet to get you ready for whether you are filing online or in person or over the phone. How do you know what information you should be providing? This is where that blue book criteria comes into place. So not all disabilities are created equal in the eyes of Social Security. Some disabilities, you're going to have to do a little more documentation gathering, like the burden of proof falls on you to demonstrate the severity and impact of that condition. So let's give a couple of examples. So if you were to just Google Social Security Blue Book, Down syndrome, then you're going to see what the criteria are. And the criteria is pretty straightforward. You want to see a genetic lab result that says trisomy 21. That's really pretty much it. But if you do that same Google search for autism, you're going to see it's a little different. You're going to have to show the diagnosis of autism, which is characterized by the qualitative and quantitative deficits and interactions, yada, yada, yada. But you're also going to have to show diminished mental residual functional capacity. It's a little bit harder to prove. So this is why you see almost never, in fact, I've never seen a medical denial for Down syndrome, but I have seen medical denials of autism quite frequently because there's not corresponding documentation proving diminished mental residual functional capacity. So that Blue Book criteria is essential for letting you know what documentation do you need to provide, what standard do you need to meet. It's also important to know when you're applying for Social Security benefits, you apply for SSI, you are automatically going to be screened for SSDI. Remember, SSDI is an entitlement program. So if you're eligible for SSDI, Social Security wants to make sure that you're getting it. And it scares families because you've gone through all this process, you apply for SSI, and they are really fast with those denials. So it's like 10 days, you get that really thin envelope that says you've been, your claim for SSDI has been disapproved. And the families are like, what do we do? Do we need to appeal? It's like, no, no, no. Look at the top left-hand corner. This is for SSDI. This is the retirement survivors benefit. We weren't really applying for that. We're applying for SSI. That case is still under review. They're just letting you know that you got a technical denial for SSDI. It's okay. Your SSI application is still in play. Just expect that. That's a scary surprise. I always try to remember to tell folks, and half the time I forget to tell them, and then they get scared. So I don't want to scare anybody. You're going to get denied for SSDI. It's going to be okay. You just file 13 it, and just keep waiting. Look at it as good news, because if you have been denied for SSDI with your SSI application, that means your application is being processed. Yay! That means somebody has actually gone through the process to screen it for SSDI, denied it, done that. That means it's on its way to disability determination services for SSI. Yay! Okay, so what else? There's a phone call that you're going to get by the intake team. They're going to screen you for that financial eligibility. Remember when we talked about the income hurdle and the financial resources hurdle? So they're going to ask a gazillion questions. I mean, questions that you just got to kind of laugh. I mean, like, if you were sitting on a gold mine, would you be there? Come on, no. But they're going to ask, do you have minimum rights? Do you have a railroad pension? Were you in the military? Did you have a pension before, 1968? You're like, I wasn't born in 1968, but that's okay. They have all these questions that they have to ask. They even ask folks, did you win the lottery? Again, if we won the lottery, would we be here? But that's okay. Are there royalties? So it's nope. They're just beating the bushes for any kind of additional resources that are going to put you over that $2,000. Or additional income that's going to put you over that income requirement. So that's what that technical screen is. So don't panic, expect it, just be prepared and understand that's what they're doing. They're looking for any additional resources or savings. So finally, you get to the medical determination of disability. So the person that you talk to with the financial part, that's a claims representative. That person is not on the disability determination services team. It's in a separate office. I know here in Georgia, one of the biggest office is over in Stone Mountain. A lot of times, I always say that's where good autism cases go to die. They just do a lot of rubber stamping denial with autism over there, unfortunately. But you don't have any control over what adjudication office you get sent to. And it's very common because there may be surges in cases from time to time that Social Security, the local office will say, okay, this disability determination services group's kind of full, so we're going to start outsourcing. So we might outsource to disability determination services at GVRA, or we may outsource to disability determination services to another group out of state. So don't be alarmed if you get correspondence and it comes from Maryland or Virginia or anywhere else. Where it gets confusing is for my individuals who are, while they're applying for SSI, they've also applied for services through Voc Rehab, and they get confused because this is actually disability determination services. The envelope says GVRA. It's the exact same logo that they have from their other paperwork related to other GVRA services, but this is through disability determination services. So just be aware that you're going to be assigned some disability determination services adjudicator. We just don't know what service group that's going to be with. So just be on the lookout. Could be anybody. Again, that blue book is going to drive what medical documentation that they're going to be looking for to get that determination of disability. There are some conditions that are compassionate allowances. So like Lee's disease, for example, if you have Lee's disease, you don't have to have the mountain of paperwork from all your hospitalizations related to Lee's disease. You just show that one-page diagnostic of Lee's disease and you file that as a compassionate allowance. So depending on what condition you have, you would want to check to see if it's a compassionate allowance. How do you do that? You just go to that SSA.gov site, you look at compassionate allowances. They have the entire alphabet. You put the name of that condition in there to see if it's on that list or not. If it's not on the list, again, you may ask for a quick determination, especially if you have Medicaid through the deeming waiver. But generally, most cases right now are taking about 8 to 10 months to get a decision, to get all the way through that adjudication process. Oh, I did forget to mention, when you are applying for Social Security, you have to sign a release. You're going to have to sign a release. Even if you file online, it's not a 99% complete application until they have that release and until they have a wet signature on that copy of the application. That was a process change that they did just a few months ago, where you would apply online and then that triggers a copy of the application being sent to you that has a signature line on it. You sign that, return that with the release, and then it's a final application. But Social Security is not going to move forward with the case without that release. Here's the thing, and you see a lot of folks applying for SSI. And I remember when I was going into the office, we're all in the little cubbies, and they wouldn't bring any documentation with them. They just sign the release, they answer the questions, and then they walk out. It's a good thing because, Social Security is going to do the work for you to gather the documentation, but it's a big risk because you're surrendering your narrative at the moment that you're just signing the release and not providing medical documentation on your own. And let me prepare you for the fact that Social Security may try to dissuade you from sending medical documentation. Okay, they're like, you don't need to do that. Just sign the release. No. You want to control your own narrative. You have the psychological evaluations, you have the IEPs, you have the letters of medical verification from doctors, you have the hospital discharge papers, you have whatever it is that you want to submit with your claim. You want to make sure that that gets to Social Security, because that's going to help view that adjudicator as somebody checking a box. Okay, they're checking a box, and those boxes that they're checking are directly related to whatever criteria is outlined in the Blue Book. If it's Down syndrome, they're looking for anything that says Down syndrome on it. They're looking for that genetic analysis that says trisomy 21. Check, approved. If it's an autism case, they have that psychological evaluation. I see that diagnosis of autism, check. But then they have to check the boxes for mental residual functional capacity. So we want to make sure that you're providing enough documentation that illustrates the severity and impact of the condition. It's not enough just to say, here's the condition. You have to also show, and this is what it feels like. This is what life is like with us. This is his ability to complete activities of daily living. This is what happens when he tries to form social relationships. This is what happens when his routine changes. So all of these dynamics reflect diminished mental residual functional capacity. It's an essential part of that medical determination of disability. So what does that look like? These are the 4 criteria for diminished mental residual functional capacity. So they're looking for understanding, processing, and memory. So that's why if you have autism with accompanying intellectual impairment, you want to highlight that full scale IQ score that's below 70, because that's going to be like ipso facto diminished understanding, processing, and memory right there. But if you don't do that, you want to kind of nitpick other assessments that demonstrate impaired processing speed or diminished executive function that's impacting the individual's ability to understand, process information, and give it back. Concentration, persistence, and pace. So, a lot of times you might have a condition that's co-occurring with ADHD. Well, this is where that comes into play because you can gather information related to the attention deficit to show that you have extreme marked limitations with regard to concentration. Do you have any teacher reports about, how your kid just gets frustrated and overwhelmed and shuts down or gives up? Well, that's persistence. So you want to provide that documentation to support restrictions or limitations in persistence. Or, wow, Eric does such a great job and he works so slowly. So again, showing that documentation that his pace is significantly slower than a neurotypical counterparts. All of this is documentation that's going to demonstrate diminished mental residual functional capacity. Likewise, documentation related to relationships. When I talk about adaptability, we're really talking about the individual decompensating. So, in cases of autism, our guys get fairly rigid. So what happens when you change the routine? What happens when they're in a situation with a lot of stress or a lot of stimulation? Can they adapt to that? Or do they kind of decompensate and begin escalating? So that's the kind of documentation that you have to gather and provide. And you see, that's not always going to be on an IEP, or it may not be in a psychological evaluation. So you might have to gather and request additional documentation, letters from therapists, letters from teachers, letters from medical professionals to this effect. Social Security also uses function reports. So let's say the adjudicator gets the case, they'll send you a letter and say, hi, your case is now being reviewed by Disability Determination Services. We may not have quite enough information to review or make a decision about your case, so we may have more questions for you. Then a couple of weeks later, you might get an envelope that has a function report. So a function report is basically a questionnaire in which Social Security is asking questions about activities of daily living. What does a person do during their day? What supports do they need? That sort of thing. So if you get a function report for the individual, have the individual complete it themselves. You, as a parent or care provider, would complete the third-party function reports. I've actually had a case get denied because one parent completed the function report, and the other parent completed the third-party report. And it was kind of obvious, honestly, from looking at it, hey, the parent wrote this, okay? But they were like, wow, this person looks pretty high functioning. Yep, they can work. Really? Yeah. So have the individual do the function report. If they have dysgraphia or they have difficulty writing or have even difficulty signing their name, like my son can see that line and he starts off in big letters and might kind of go down in a curve, and that's just perfect because that's going to give them a lot of information just on the basis of a signature. So yeah, those function reports can be kind of important. When they're on the fence, they're going to be looking to get additional information. And so it's not uncommon to have a situation where Social Security wants you to go to their psychologist for a mental assessment. Every now and again, they're bona fide evaluations. Most of the time, they're mental status exams. So I've frequently had individuals go through this process and they're being given the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. So just Google Montreal Cognitive Assessment and you can see this one-page little doodad has an analog clock, put 215 on it. It'll have a picture of a rhino, a hippo, and a camel. What are these three animals? I'm going to give you 3 words, and then 5 minutes later, can you remember those 3 words? This is a great assessment that I would use. Don't tell my mom, she's 85, but yeah, I will do this with her sometimes, just put in a couple of words and see if a few minutes later she can remember those words, because I'm assessing for cognitive decline. I'm assessing for signs of dementia, right? This is not a great assessment for a young person or a person with autism, but they frequently use this. So you can kind of see that, quite frankly, the cards are stacked up against you when you're going to their psychologist. All the more reason to make sure that you are controlling your narrative and you are providing documentation from your psychologist regarding the impact. So very important that you do that. In situations in which the diagnosis is a mental health issue, so let's say we have an individual with schizophrenia, and you can Google Social Security Blue Book, schizophrenia. And what are you going to see? You're going to see you're going to need to prove the diagnosis. You may need to prove diminished mental residual functional capacity, just like we've described. But also in mental health cases, you have a big or, you see or in all caps, mental residual functional capacity, or documentation that this condition is serious and persistent. So if this person has had this diagnosis for a couple of years and you have a letter of medical verification from the psychiatrist that attests to the severity and impact of that condition and that it's serious and persistent, that is going to be critical and should be controlling weight for that adjudicator. What happens despite all your best efforts? You lose. Don't give up. They're kind of banking on the fact that you're going to give up, okay? Keep in mind, at the initial application level, did you know only, I think it's 28%, it's either 23 or 28, I get those numbers mixed, but a really low number are approved at the initial application level. Why? Because most applications don't come with medical documentation. So at the reconsideration level, that's less than a 10% success rate if you're not providing additional medical documentation. What happens at reconsideration is they're literally taking up this application, like here's the file, I'm going to put it on this desk, and I'm going to march across the room, and I want to give it to this person and set it down on their desk. So they said no. What do you think? It's probably going to be no, right? Unless you give them additional documentation. I always like to give them something to hang their hat on. I don't know how they're evaluated. For all I know, they're getting dinged if they approve it when their peer denied it. How do we know? We don't know. So I have a document that I use that's, I actually have two assessments. One that's a determination of need assessment, and one that I use specifically at this level that is mapped to that residual mental functional capacity, because I want them to be able to check that box, and I want to have them have a new piece of documentation that attests to the severity and impact. So then they can read that and go, well, oh, this is a horse of a different color. Yes, yes, you've been awarded. So don't give up. Even if they don't look at it and it goes all the way to a hearing, keep in mind that about half of all cases are won at the hearing, okay? So your odds are getting better the more that you stay with it. So don't give up, go through that process. But if you win, woohoo, then what do? Couple things to keep in mind. First, the award that you're getting is probably gonna be 2/3 of the maximum award. If the maximum award is $841, they're gonna lop off a third of that because you're living at home. So you offset that. I have this whole other process to offset that by giving a rental agreement, and there's a Social Security has a form that they use. It's a rental supplement. You complete that form, give that to them, demonstrate that the individual is paying their fair share, document that you're actually taking the money from point A and point B. Yeah, increase that Social Security award. That's the first order of the day. I generally focus on, let's just get the award first. I'm not worried about how much I can get at first. I really just want to get the approval. Once I get the approval, then I'll focus on getting the maximum amount. Be advised that because it takes 8 to 10 months for them to come to this decision, that initial technical conversation that you had, you know, about mineral rights, lottery winnings, and all of that, they're going to come back. They're going to do that again because they want to make sure that nothing's changed. Make sure you haven't won the lottery in the past 10 months, which makes sense. You know, it's like it was true then. They just want to confirm pretty quick, but there you go. The other thing is when you win and you have that Social Security award, your disability is always subject to what's called a CDR, a continuing disability review. So when you've been awarded, they're going to say, okay, you've been awarded, but we're going to check back in 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years, whatever the case may be. But the standard is different at that CDR. At the CDR, they're asking, has your condition changed? So it's not a process of complete adjudication as it was before. You've already established the disability. What you're just proving at that point is that that condition is still going on. That it you know, when they called me the last time, I was like, yeah, nope, still no cure for autism. Nope, didn't get that magic wand. Sorry, here we are. So they just want to ask if anything has changed. What I have seen is a trend in the use of a disability update status. So it's a little kind of questionnaire that comes in the mail, and it's big bold print, and it looks really easy. It has these big boxes that you check, but it's a little tricky because it has a couple of questions on there that could trigger a CDR. It's going to ask, have you talked to your doctor about working? And you know, you check yes. Well, yes, I have talked to my doctor about going to work. Well, then let's have a continuing disability review to explore that. Or it'll say, is your condition, you know, the same or better or worse? And you're like, you know, I'm doing a little bit better. And you check better. That's probably going to trigger a continuing disability review. So you get a disability update report. Take that very, very seriously. Take some time and make sure that you're completing it fully. All right, so I want to spend just a few minutes talking about working as a Social Security beneficiary. Yay! So remember we talked about the blue book is all things to get the benefits, all the things benefits acquisition. Well, the red book is all those rules. So the first thing that you want to do when you start thinking about working as a Social Security beneficiary, go ahead, go to the blue book, it's not the blue book, the red book, download that PDF of the red book, and that's going to be all those rules for you. In a nutshell, these programs are radically different. You have SSI and SSDI. The only thing they have in common is that medical determination of disability. When you think about SSI and you're working, think monthly calculation. There's always math involved with SSI. When you're thinking SSDI, think about it in terms of phases. There's different work incentives that impact each one. So with SSI, it feels a little bit like taxes. You start with the gross earnings. You're going to deduct a $20 general income exclusion. You're going to deduct a $65 earned income exclusion. You're going to deduct any impairment related work expenses like transportation. Then you're going to divide the remainder in half and subtract that from your SSI award, and that's your new SSI award. Math done every month. SSDI starts with a trial work period. So you have 9 times. It's 9 months, but I like to say 9 times because saying 9 months makes it sound like it's always consecutive, and it's not always consecutive. There's a trial work period threshold. So that trial work period level this year is $970. So if I'm an SSDI beneficiary and I'm earning $900, I am not over that trial work period threshold. So I have not used any of my trial work period months. But anytime I go over that threshold, and that threshold is going to change every January, but this year it's 970. Anytime it goes over that, then I've used one, like ding. So if you're an SSDI beneficiary, you want to keep a spreadsheet. You want to record your earnings each month so you can look at those gross earnings and determine if it's a trial work period or not. In that trial work period, you have 9 times where you get to earn as much as you can. If you earn over the trial work period, you're in that trial work period month. But if you even earn over substantial gainful activity level, you're still good. That's only for the trial work period. So 9 times, 9 months. After that, you go into an extended period of eligibility. That's 36 consecutive months. See why you want a spreadsheet? Because each month you're going to circle those 9 times of a trial work period. And then following that, you're going to say the next 36 months are my extended period of eligibility. And it's this all or nothing kind of consideration. If I'm earning above substantial gainful activity, I don't get my SSDI check. If I'm below that substantial gainful activity, I am. So that substantial gainful activity threshold this year is 1,350. So that's 36 months. And then following that, you have 93 months of an extended period of eligibility. See how many rules there are? This is why you want to have the red book. And not only do you want to have the red book, you want a counselor. So don't try to remember all of this. Don't try to remember, oh my gosh, this is a monthly calculation. What's an impairment related work expense? What about job subsidies? I mean, it's like, I don't know, Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin. You're going to be screaming in the pumpkin patch. Nah, it's too much. Go to a benefits counselor. That's their job to break this down for you. So there are 3 work incentive planning and assistance programs in the state of Georgia. It's based on what county you're in. You go through the Ticket to Work helpline. So you call the helpline, you say, hi, I'd like a work incentive counselor. I'm starting back to work. Need to know how work impacts my benefits. I need a counselor. And they're going to go, great. And they're going to take all this information from you. And based on the county, they're going to forward that referral to a WIPA agency, who is then going to assign it to a certified community work incentive coordinator. And then you're going to get some counseling. Woohoo. So how does BDI help with all of this? We have a benefits acquisition team. That's myself and Sheila Carter, who's an amazing beneficiary advocate. So the benefits acquisition team, we provide guidance and support throughout this entire process. We have assessments that we do, that determination of need assessment. It's really an amalgam between the function reports and a supports intensity scale and a health risk screening tool. And so it's a BDI original assessment that is geared to provide a lot of good substantive clinical information to help that adjudicator go, yep, this is where we are. That adaptive function, residual functional capacity assessment that I mentioned, that's specifically mapped to those 4. We do that at the reconsideration phase. We also do, for complicated cases, medical evidentiary reviews. In other words, when we think this case is so kind of wonky that the adjudicator is going to go, I give up, and just, rubber stamp in the denial, we provide a summary. So we go through it all. We create a chronological history, and we pull out all the relevant salient points and highlight that and provide a summary and give that to the adjudicator. So it's kind of like, I don't know, getting an assessment in a pretty turquoise Tiffany box. We also help with overpayment issues. Sheila has taken the lead on designing and rolling out an incredible futures planning process. We've got a lot of cool programs going on at BDI. And currently we are with a provider for 54 counties, primarily on the western side of the state. So north to south, pretty much on the western side. All right, I think, yay, I left 15 minutes for questions. Woohoo, I did it, yay.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and open up for questions. Thank you, Anna. That was an awesome presentation. I learned a lot. I'm sure our parents and caregivers here learned a ton. If you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put it in the chat and I'll make sure that Anna hears it. If you are not actively asking a question, I do ask you to go ahead and mute yourself so that we can reduce any background noises and that we can hear Anna's answer. Okay, so who wants to go first? Tracy, did you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
Go, Tracy.
So my son is on Katie Beckett deeming waiver. And if I understand this correctly, because I work with your facility, I work with Sheila, he had to be determined disabled by Social Security to even get that Medicaid waiver. Is that correct?
He was determined through the Katie Beckett office, not necessarily Social Security.
So
So
getting,
there may be some relational pieces there, but it may not have been a Social Security adjudicator. Having said that, if you've been determined, awarded a Katie Beckett deeming waiver, there's so much significance to the impact that you're demonstrating through all those therapies. You've got all the documentation that you need for Social Security.
okay,
But you can't just say, hey, we got the Katie Beckett deeming waiver. You need to, approve this super fast.
right. So, I mean, I understand that. So I'm supposed to take all of my documentation, like all of my medical records that I had to submit for him, because he gained the waiver, not just for the autism, but other health impairments. So I should take all my documentation, all 500 pages of it, for the hospitalizations he's had since birth, and as well as his psych eval showing his cognitive deficit and letters from the doctors and all that stuff, and submit all that, correct?
Yep, correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
And in that section 11, when they give you the opportunity for remarks, remind them, hey, he has been a recipient of the deeming waiver. He uses the Medicaid for these reasons. He requires support for his activities of daily living. You just do that recap in that summary. Please make sure that you do those remarks, because it just helps them pin that together.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're doing great. That was hard work getting that Katie Beckett, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. I have two questions in the chat that I want to address real quick. Suzanne asked me, she said, I know this is early on, but here's my question. My special needs adult has SSI at 18. We understand when a parent starts drawing from SSI, he would get SSDI based off of the parent. We understand if he gets substantially gainfully employed, that he can't get parental SSI. My question is, how long does he have to be substantially gainfully employed? Is it 1 month? Is it the time that the parent starts drawing SSI? Her concern is trying to get the child off SSI. I'm not fully understanding.
Right.
It's
Yeah, we got a
Okay, I'm gonna,
Yeah,
hey, this is me. You want to kind of ask it a little bit better?
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
go
okay.
ahead, Suzanne.
Okay, so I have an 18-year-old. He already has SSI. He works part-time. Our goal is to get him off of SI, but we're really not sure if he can do it or not.
Okay.
We were just told, we understand that since he did qualify before 22, he will get the, I guess, off the 50% off a parent's SSDI. But I was also just told that if he hits substantial gainful employment, he loses the child disability status. Is that true? And if so, does he have to be off on so much period of time? Or is it instant? If he hits it 1 month, he's no longer considered.
Right.
What's the rule on that?
Okay.
And my
So-
concern is that he works for 2 months, it doesn't work out, and then the rest of his life, he's on his disability and not the parents.
Right. So let's look at first the ability to earn and what substantial gainful activity is. And substantial gainful activity, in theory, is not intended to be a number, it's intended to be a value. And so what Social Security is supposed to be looking at is, can this individual sustain this level of employment over time? So they're trying to rule out any of these, one-offs where, we held it together for 2 months and then it didn't work out. So in that sense, it shouldn't be viewed as like if you have a track record where you're earning and you hit substantial gainful activity twice, but then, back to 0 or less, it's not really to the spirit of what SGA is.
Okay.
So there's that. It's a little convoluted. I've never heard that where, if they've lost that, then they've lost their status as a CDB beneficiary. It's like, if you have that condition, you've had that condition. If you exceed SGA, then you're not getting any benefit. That's the part. So it's not that they've necessarily lost that status forever so much as it is, remember, it's that all or nothing. And you have that trial work period, and then you have the extended period of eligibility, and then you have
So do they have to
expedited
be, I guess
reinstatement. Does it
that
what?
was my worry, is do they have to be off of, I mean, if they hit SGA there for 1 month, they're fine basically, but if they do the trial work period and they're on their own, then I can see. I guess I'm just worried if he does start working full time and it doesn't work out, is he still protected under the parent?
Right. It has nothing to do with the parent status. It has everything to do with the work incentives. So whether or not he had that SSDI on his own or was a CDB or is a CDB, what they're really just looking at is his ability to earn. And, the whole part of that determination of disability is you're basically coming at it from a stance of you're not able to earn.
Right.
And so they're thinking, based on all the medical documentation they provided, that he's not able to do that. So then if he is able to do that, that's where that triggers that. It's not just that point of he hit that value. It's likely to trigger that continuing disability review, because they're going to like, what changed? Because obviously he's able to do this. So is he still disabled? So it's really the question of, is he disabled, that comes into question.
Okay. I mean, like I said, we're not sure right now he couldn't do it, but if we're working up to do it and then he does hit it, but then he can't sustain it, is he in trouble for the rest of his life? Or will they look at that and say, yeah, he did it for a couple months, but he wasn't able, and we're going to keep him under. Is there anything that triggers them to be off of the child disabled, I guess is what I'm trying to look at.
Or not necessarily. Like, if you are awarded SSDI and you're a childhood disability beneficiary and you're working, what it's really going to boil down to is if you are able to work at that substantial gainful activity level and subject yourself to a CDR where they determine that you're no longer disabled, then that means that we have a new decision. We have a new decision. You're no longer disabled.
So if he just does it, so if he just goes above it for a couple of months and then it doesn't work and he just has to go back to part-time, he's probably fine.
Probably fine. One of the things that I would look at is, again, the Red Book's going to outline a whole bunch of work incentives and all. One of those is job subsidy. A lot of times we don't talk about impairment related work expenses as it relates to SGA for somebody that's on SSDI, but when it's getting close where they're going over and we're kind of thinking, this may or may not work out, we might want to show that this person had special conditions at work.
So so if he sees a psychologist, like we paid for a job coach, so we subtracted that ourselves. So if he sees a psychologist, we can subtract that too. So then he would fall under substantial gainful employment. Is that okay? Would a psychologist work if he sees it one weekly? Maybe.
Social Security reserves a right to determine what they're going to say is an impairment related offense. If you can show that that's specifically related to his ability to work, and you may have a fighting chance towards that.
Okay. Yeah. So your advice is basically to look into those.
You would definitely want to look at that as a special condition, though.
Okay.
Again, so it's like if you look at an individual and they've got a job coach and they need, extra therapy and extra supports, you need to bring that into play. And you say, it's like, he's able to hit this SGA level, but it's because of all these things. It's not as if, we're comparing him to neurotypical peers who don't require those supports. His requiring these special conditions means that he's not really at an SGA. That would be the argument you would make.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks, Suzanne. I have a quick question from Trey. Then we're going to go to Ernestine and then Rosanna and Tina. Trey asked if it takes 8 to 10 months for the application process, should we start at age 17 or do we have to wait until his 18th birthday?
Have to wait till the 18th birthday. I actually tend to file the month following the 18th birthday.
Okay.
But when you're awarded, it's going to go all the way back to the point of original application.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you just,
Um,
I love my families that plan ahead. You just can't plan ahead with this.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Ernestine, did you have a question?
Yes, my granddaughter father passed and she's on SSDI now. Now, is there a limit as to how much she can make? She works part-time at
Mhm.
Walmart.
Right. So if she has SSDI, you know,
Yeah.
she's going to go through the trial work period first. And then she's going to go to that extended period of eligibility. That the substantial gainful activity threshold is 1,350. That's gross earnings each month. But that's only at that 36-month extended period of eligibility. You know, she has to get through the trial work period first. So
Oh,
I strongly recommend that you call that Ticket to Work helpline and get a benefits counselor so that y'all can walk through what work incentives there may be, you know, to understand those safety nets, to kind of help chart that, to help manage those benefits.
okay, so you say I should contact the Ticket to Work.
Yeah, it's the ticket, called the Ticket to Work helpline. It's this number, the 866-968-7842.
7842.
So you call them and you say, I am, you know, we're starting to work and we need a work incentive counselor.
Okay, well, she's been working and
So-
I think she's on the Ticket to Work because we get mail from Ticket to Work.
Okay, so the Ticket to Work helpline helps get you access to a work incentive counselor. Having a ticket to work is a work incentive. So it's designed for individuals who eventually want to come off benefits. And it's a 6-year process of sort of this quid pro quo that during this time, we're going to provide you with some job support and we're going to shield you from a continuing disability review in exchange for your intention to come off of benefits. That's what a Ticket to Work is. So it's a work incentive program. The Ticket to Work helpline is like a call center that's managing all these kinds of questions. So even if she has a ticket to work, she would still call the Ticket to Work helpline to request assistance from a benefits counselor.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I got one other thing. I'm sorry. Is there a limit to how much she can make?
Yeah, that's that substantial gainful activity threshold. So if you cross over that threshold and they're going to view you as no longer disabled, you're no longer receiving those benefits.
Okay.
So that's where we were talking about how it's supposed to be a proposition of value versus a number, but sometimes they treat it like a number. So you always want to be careful with that. That's why I really, 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 really please get a benefits counselor so they can walk you through that and they'll go through the process. You call the helpline, they'll do a referral. Once you get a counselor, they're going to have you go to Social Security. You're going to sign a 3288 release so that the benefits counselor can help you. You'll get a benefits planning query from Social Security because they have to verify the benefits. And then they're going to, it's like crunching the numbers. It's like what you're earning. Let's play with that. Let's see how that plays out. But that benefits planning query is very important because we want to see, especially for folks on SSDI, we want to see how many months they have already utilized from that trial work period. Have you utilized none? Have you utilized 5? Have you utilized all? That's a really important question to ask.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Ernestine. We are at the 7:30 mark. Anna, are you able to stick around for a couple more minutes? We have a couple more questions in the chat.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, just in case if anyone needs to go ahead and go, I just want to do a couple quick announcements and then we'll get back to the questions. If you have questions, go ahead and stick around. Anna's going to answer them for you. I just want to let everyone know I'm going to be sending out a follow-up email either tomorrow or Wednesday. It's going to have Anna's slide deck in it, and it's also going to have a couple announcements regarding some upcoming workshops. You can go ahead and mark your calendars for Thursday, September 18th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. We're going to be having a workshop with Special Needs Cop is doing a workshop with Kelly Bramlett of CCSD, and we're going to be doing it on cyber safety for special needs young adults and teens. That's going to be a lunchtime one. Again, it's going to be noon to 1 p.m. on Thursday, September 8th. I'll be sending out the link for that when I do the follow-up. Also, Anna is going to be back with us on Monday, October 3rd, same time, 6 to 7:30. She's going to be talking about the now comp waiver and family support, which I know is just as popular as SSI. And again, I'll have the registration link ready for you guys when I send out that email. And just keep an eye out for that email. And then in probably about a week or so, I'll have this recording available as well. And I'll send everyone the link to that too. And I also have a quick survey. It's 4 questions. It'll take you probably a whole minute. I'm going to put it in here, but I'm also going to send it to you all as well. If y'all could just fill that out, that helps me make decisions about the workshops program to make sure that I am putting on ones that you all like and are able to come to. So if you could just fill that out for me, I would really appreciate that. And again, if you need to go ahead and go, peace out. Have a good night. I'll see you in September. But if you guys have questions, stick around and Anna is going to answer them for you. So
Thank you, Anna. You're wonderful. You just give such a great service to everybody, and it's such a joy hearing you speak. I have to bug out. I got to go back to work. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, we're gonna go back to the questions. So Tina, if from the chat says, my son has the comp waiver. His dad passed away in November 2019. I'm sorry, Tina. And was drawing SSDI before he passed. I've heard so many waiver individuals who have lost their Medicaid, which funds the comp waiver when they make the transition to SSDI. What do I do to assure he doesn't lose Medicaid and will not be able to use his comp waiver when he goes to Medicare?
Okay. The good news is if he already has a comp waiver and he has SSDI, he probably has continued his Medicaid. He hasn't been dropped. What happens is people get dropped. Because he has a comp waiver, your support coordinator, let's just say some weird fluke happened and he gets dropped and you get a letter, you know, he's no longer getting Medicaid. What do? You have a support coordinator because you have the comp waiver. So you go to your support coordinator and say, we've lost Medicaid. Remember how we talked about there's 34 classifications of Medicaid? One of those classifications is a now comp waiver. So even if you exit the SSI door, you go right back in the now comp door, okay? And that support coordinator can complete an MAO, medical assistance only, communicator. They can get that Medicaid reinstated really quickly. So your challenge is to make sure that you continue to meet Medicaid requirements. So again, and this is where I want to throttle Social Security sometimes because they'll go, oh, great, you know, you got SSDI, you don't have to worry about Medicaid anymore. Yeah, you do. If you have a waiver, you're always going to have to worry about Medicaid. So you want to continue to watch to make sure that the financial resources don't exceed 2,000. So that's where that ABLE account may come into play. So you have income limits, you have resource limits, and you still have to maintain that determination of disability. So those are the 3 requirements to maintain that Medicaid. You should be good. The one that trips people up the most is that financial resource limit. They go over $2,000. So
Thank you so much. This is Tina. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Tina. Tara asks, we want to set up a trust that we can put funds for use to make sure our son isn't living in poverty when we are gone. Our nephew is going to be the trustee. Do you have any other recommendations? I think it's about trustee.
There are organizations that do that. So, you know, you can explore your options. You always want to have a successor plan. You know, you have somebody as a trustee who's who's the successor trustee in the event that that person can no longer do it. So look at as a successor plan. You might want to look at trust organizations that can help manage that.
Okay, great. All right, so Anne asked, so if your SSDI is based on one diagnosis, say personality disorder, but the person actually has a diagnosis of Prader-Willi, is there a way to correct this? And is it important to do so to assist with optimizing benefits like waivers?
Interesting. The key question is if you were awarded SSDI benefits with the mental health, was that date of onset prior or past age 22? Because if it's past age 22, even if the individual has SSDI, they're not an adult dependent child. They're not a childhood disability beneficiary. Whereas Prader-Willi, you can, there's congenital ties to that, so you can establish onset clearly in developmental years. So it's only advantageous to correct the record if you're not getting the CDB benefit. If you're getting the CD benefit, it's okay. If what can always happen at a continuing disability review, you can go, hey, by the way, you want to have the record to show that in addition to this mental health disabling condition, we also have Prader-Willi. That's certainly fine.
Anne said before 22, she's having some trouble getting off mute, but she said before 22.
She had before 22, it's okay. Again, it's something that in a continuing disability review certainly doesn't hurt to amend. Like you're supposed to report changes and new diagnoses. I mean, it only helps ensure that this condition is viewed as ongoing. And so I would certainly provide that information, but you could wait to a continuing disability review to do that.
She said, thank you. And how often is that continuing disability review?
It can happen at any time. I had one guy, this was crazy. We got awarded SSI and we got a continuing disability review in 30 days. I'm like, hey, we just got awarded like last month. So really, it's supposed to be, and when you get the notice of award, they generally let you know that CDR is going to take place usually in 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years. What tends to happen though is if that individual is working, and especially if they're getting close to that SGA threshold, that looks kind of interesting that they're working so much, that might trigger a CDR.
Okay. She said this is so very helpful. She said, and we can do an amendment to add PWS.
I would, but I wouldn't necessarily. They're just a big clunky organization. Let's just be honest. I would probably wait. There's no advantage to adding it at this point. But when you have a continuing disability review, that's a great opportunity to use that form as a means like, yep, this is what's going on. So there's been no change with this condition, but by the way, we also have this condition as well. So I would add it at a CDR.
Okay. So we're going to go to, I missed Rosanna's question, and then we're going to go to, I think, Vicky and then Renora. Rosanna had asked, her son is 11 years old and autistic. He has Medicaid. Is she able to apply for SSI?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Her son is autistic and 11 years old and has Medicaid. Is she able to apply for SSI for him?
It's going to be based on how much the annual household income is.
Okay. Rosanna, does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Rosanna's going to let me know. Okay, let's go to Vicky. Vicky, did you have a question?
I have a couple questions. So my daughter's 33 actually, and She has a comp waiver. She also has been receiving SSI, and she's at the max since she was 18. Her dad recently retired or has started drawing SSA, his Social Security. And we applied and finally got, after months of trying to get Social Security on the phone to get an appointment, we finally got the application process completed to convert Eve's SSI to SSDI.
Mhm.
And the first question I had is, you referenced 8 to 10 months delay. Is that true if they've already have the SSI to get the medical determination?
Yeah, they shouldn't have to go through that whole process. The medical determination is the same. So it should be pretty straightforward. It's still going to take time. It's just not going to take 8 to 10 months, or it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. They
shouldn't.
told us it would
Yeah.
take weeks, but
Yeah.
and
yeah.
it's been a minute, but
Right.
you know, we're
That,
still
that's,
waiting.
that adjudication is for the initial application.
Okay.
Right.
Now,
She's already been determined disabled. They're just linking the file. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a question someone else asked made me a little nervous. Your comp waiver is not going to, her comp waiver is not going to be impacted by the decision to go to SSDI.
No, she just needs to maintain that Medicaid. And remember, you have your support coordinator. So in the
Okay.
worst case scenario, you got somebody at Social Security who doesn't know what they're doing, and they terminate the Medicaid. And sometimes this happens, and they terminate the Medicaid, and they're like, well, you just have to go to DFACS. None of us want to go to DFACS. Okay. So what you do is you call your support coordinator and say, we need to get our Medicaid reinstated stat, and they can complete that MAO communicator. And I've seen it done in less than 24 hours. I mean, they have
Okay,
it
so
inside track.
so now here's the big elephant in my room right now.
Okay.
Why is Medicaid considered a good thing compared to Medicare?
Why is it considered a bad thing?
Yeah. Why do we want
Probably
to keep it?
because it's a payer of last resort, and it typically pays penny on the dollars. So a lot of practitioners don't want to accept Medicaid. So it's fantastic for hospitalizations. It's fantastic to get your teeth extracted. It's not so great for preventative care, that kind of thing. So that's why having another form of insurance is important.
So I had always thought we'd go to Medicare and we'd be in a better place, and we would have to purchase some additional insurance for Eve for that, when that happens.
Mhm. Let's cross that bridge. What I would encourage you to do, and I think on this last slide, I got my email there. And all of y'all get my email, and y'all send me questions, because you know what's going to happen is you're going to sleep on it and you go, oh my gosh, I should have asked this. So feel free to send me any questions, because I have some research to do on the particular plan that I want to look at that I think will be helpful to families who are in that waiting period.
Okay.
So, but I'm not prepared to share information on that at this time, because I don't have enough information, and I don't ever want to raise false hope.
Okay, understood.
Yep.
I don't think I had any other questions.
Y'all
looking
asked
at the
great
notes.
questions. This was fun. I feel like
You did say something about able account limit of 16,000.
yes.
I had heard it was 100,000.
Okay, that's cumulative. Okay, I'm talking about per year. How much money you can put in per year. Plus, if an individual is earning, so let's use my son for an example. So if he were to make $12,000 this year, he could put 12,000 of his earned money in ABLE, and his rich uncle, who we don't have, could put in $15,000 or $16,000. So you can add that together.
Okay.
But when it hits 100, then Social Security is like, oh, really? You get $100,000? Ooh. So yeah, there's some.
So special needs trust is separate, and either it's supplemental or special needs trust is one of the same.
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Okay. All right. I think those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Vicky. I'm gonna quickly go back to Rosanna's follow-up question, and then I'm gonna be going to Renora. So if you remember, Rosanna was asking about if her 11-year-old autistic son can apply, and that he has Medicaid. Her follow-up question was, how much is that family income cut off?
Yeah, we would need to look. I would ask her to send me an email, because I need to look at the total amount of household income, how many people are in the family. There's a table that you look at to assess that, and that gets kind of personal in a group setting like this. So we can do that offline.
Okay, all right. We're gonna go to Renora. Oh, Rosanna
Hi.
said thank you.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I think you answered my question with what Vicky had, because I opened up an ABLE account. They had a special where if you open it up with $50, they were gonna credit you $100 or something like that.
Sweet, that's a deal.
With the Georgia Stable, if you kept it for a certain period of time. So I just want to be sure I got the scenario correct. My son just started working this summer. So my goal would be to not let his checking account go over $2,000. If it approaches that, I move those funds into his ABLE account to stay maintained below the $2,000 threshold. Is that correct?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Okay. And does it have to be the Georgia ABLE? Because I'm a financial advisor, and it looks like other funds companies offer that, like American Funds has an ABLE account. Does it have to be the state of Georgia, where I think American Funds is the state of Virginia?
Yeah, there's different ones. You know, the Georgia,
Okay.
before we did Georgia Stable, people were using the Ohio's program. So
Okay,
it's pretty much 6 of one, half dozen of another. So, you know,
Okay.
feel free to, you should be able to use
Okay,
it.
so it doesn't matter, as long as it's an ABLE, doesn't matter what state sponsored it
Yeah, you
is.
should be okay.
Okay, and then the last one, does it impair any SSI? My son turns 18 in November and will probably apply in December. Does this impact him at all if he's going to college or something to be under SSI?
What do you mean?
To be taking SSI, if he's a college student, is that impact him of getting it?
The bigger question is, are they going to determine that he has a severe enough disability if he's a college student? That's the bigger question.
That's what I was wondering. What I was wondering. Okay. 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 Thank you. That helps to determine if you know, he should go, if he's in these 2-year autistic programs like University of Georgia that doesn't offer a diploma.
Right. So you want to be really careful when you're talking to Social Security about what type of program, because there's a big difference between a post-secondary inclusion program like Destination Dogs or Georgia Tech versus a degree conferring institution. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Renora.
Thank you.
That's a great question. I'm gonna go to Suzanne. She asked, is Ticket to Work only 6 years?
Yeah, generally the plan is there are timely progress requirements throughout the Ticket to Work program. And so you're supposed to be achieving these milestones as you go. So theoretically, after that 6th year, you're working at a substantial gainful activity level and you are coming off benefits. Remember, the end goal for Ticket to Work is that your plan is to come off benefits.
Okay, I'm going to follow up. Do you need to tell Social Security about your ABLE account or no?
They're going to ask.
What if you established your ABLE account after you got SSI? Do you need to tell them?
They like to know that kind of stuff.
Okay, so you should, because we have one, so we should be telling them at this point that we opened one.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to go, sure, thanks, appreciate it, because it doesn't change anything materially, but you're following the letter of the law where you're supposed to report any changes. And because that is a change, and because it's a change that impacts their financial eligibility, it's worthwhile to report it.
Okay.
Having said that, if you don't report it, you're not going to get dinged for not reporting it either. You follow me? So it's great that you do. It's like, you know, extra credit points. Yeah, you did it, but they're not going to come after you if you don't.
Okay, and then I've heard mixed feelings about this. So I actually have two. So if you have one that is never going to work and all that kind of stuff, and he does have the waiver, the now comp waiver, can you, if there is extra money, like $50 a month, should you open an able for him or not?
That
You would just use
depends.
the money.
It depends on if how close is he to that $2,000 limit?
He's not, he uses most of his money.
Then if he uses it, then you really don't need to worry about it until such time. Think about it as a tool for after you're gone, and you want that. Remember, a supplemental needs trust, that special needs trust is supplemental needs. So it's not, there's a lot of restrictions to how it's used. So there's still value in having an ABLE account
we
as
should-
a pass-through
So
account.
we should just maybe open an able account and just part our own, maybe like $50 or whatever in it, but
Yeah.
don't use the Social Security money. Okay.
Isn't it true though that whatever money you put in your ABLE account, if you get, let's say you get to 100,000 and the child passes before that money is spent, that
There's a
money
clawback.
goes to the state, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It acts like a first party trust. So a first party supplemental trust has a clawback provision. A third party does not. So that's why we want families to do their estate planning kind of early on, so they don't have money in the individual's name, and they can put future money in this third party because there's no Medicaid clawback. Yes, you're absolutely right. An ABLE account has a Medicaid clawback.
So
And
if
so
there's-
the third party is what I would call the special needs trust or the supplemental needs trust. Is that what you mean by third party trust?
There are two types of supplemental needs trusts. So you have a first party trust and a third party trust. So a first party trust, let's say if I had a birth injury, okay, and I sued my OB because it was a birth injury. That money, because that money is earmarked for that individual, would have to go into a first party trust instead of a third party trust, okay? Whereas my life insurance policy, happily, I'm still here, so it hasn't happened yet. So that would be a third party trust because it's not in his name. He hasn't had it yet. So two types of trusts, first party, third party.
So if a
First party has
ahead.
the clawback, just like ABLE account has a clawback.
if your child works, should they put money, should the check be deposited into the ABLE account, or the check can be deposited in the SSI account as long as it doesn't hit 2,000?
Bingo.
Or can you,
Mhm.
huh?
Yeah, the latter. You just want to manage it. It can go into their bank account. You just want to make sure it doesn't go over 2,000.
Okay, because we had put it into the regular account and then moved it to the ABLE account. I don't know if it makes a difference. No, it
That's
doesn't.
fine.
Okay,
That's fine. Yeah,
okay, you've been super helpful, so thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Awesome, thank you. Hang on one second. I think the next question was Tina needed clarification. She said, did I hear you say to not put your whole SSI check in an ABLE account?
You don't put your SSI check into an ABLE account, right? An SSI check is intended to be used for food, shelter, clothing. So what would happen, again, let's use my son as an example. So he gets the full 841, right? I am a slumlord mom, so he has to pay me rent. And so because he's paying me rent, that's what's enabling him to get that full amount, because I'm not subsidizing him because he's paying his fair share. So I take that rent, bwahaha, that rent is now mine. So what I choose to do with that, I can put that into an ABLE account. I can spend it in Vegas. That's my money at that point and not his, right? But we have to be good stewards of SSI. So taking his SSI and putting it straight into an ABLE account is a big no-no. So taking that SSI and paying for my rent is a big yes.
I think Kim Martin calls that money laundering, but it's legal.
Yep.
Okay, the next one. Tina said thank you. All right, the next one is going to be Kamala. Does the kid get SSDI equal to half of parent social security benefits monthly once the parent turns 68?
Yeah, if they're a childhood disability beneficiary, gonna pull 50% off of the record. As a general rule, there could always be complications because there's a 150% max. So let's say if you had quadruplets, they're all 4 disabled, you know, that might not be the full amount. So Social Security has discretion. I really get scared to get into Social Security's head to try to figure out what that computation might be. So they would have that discretion of how much that they would be providing, but they're supposed to be looking at a 150% max rule. But if you're only have one individual that's going to be receiving that SSDI, then it should be 50% of the parent's record.
All right, thanks Kamala for that question. We have a lot of thank yous from Rosanna, Renora, Tina. It looks like I'm at the end of the questions in chat. Does anybody else have any other questions for Anna before we jump off of here?
I think I have a follow-up question on the Medicaid, Medicare question. Is she automatically, when she switches over to SSDI, you don't know. We don't know until we know whether they're going to take the Medicaid away or not.
Right. They're not supposed to.
Okay.
She's entitled to it. She's in a protected class.
Okay.
But sometimes we got to account for that human error. This is, if you want to follow Anna Luck. Anna Luck means that you are super prepared and you are ready, expecting the worst to happen, and then the worst doesn't happen. But rather you be prepared and just watch for it. So because you're watching for it, you should be okay.
Is it either or can she have Medicare and Medicaid?
She'll eventually have Medicare and Medicaid. But remember there's that 24-month waiting period for Medicare. So the risk is that if they screw up and they drop her from Medicaid and she's in that waiting period, she has no health insurance. And because she has a waiver, she's got to have Medicaid. But remember, you're in a protected class. Remember how we talked about the 34 different doors?
Yeah.
She was eligible because she had SSI. She's eligible as a CDB beneficiary, and she's eligible for a Medicaid based on her home and community-based waiver. So she's got like 3 doors that she can go in and out of, right?
Well, and
So
actually
okay.
4, because she's, until her dad actually retires, she's got group health, she's got United Healthcare, primary, Medicaid, secondary,
Right.
and then I don't know when Medicare kicks in or not, but I anticipate he'll be leaving next year, you know, actually leaving his job, and then we'll rejigger everything on the benefits package. Thank you so much, Anna, for your patience in answering these questions.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
And thanks, Alexa, for moderating.
Oh, you're welcome, Mickey. We love Eve.
We do too. Bye.
Bye. All right. Tina said, thank you. This was so informative. Does anybody have any other questions?
Going once, going twice.
All right.
Just keep my email. Y'all feel free to email me at any time if you have questions. You know, we're here to help. So
awesome. Well, I think with that, Anna, is there anything else you want to add before we leave?
no, just thank you. It's a good sized group and a lot of y'all hung in to the bitter end. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely. There's some awesome participants today. Linda said thank you. Thanks, Linda, for always coming to my workshops. All right. Well, I think that's it for tonight. Look out for emails from me, and I will include Anna's deck and her information. We will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.